"Wesley, put your shoes on," Aaron Aldridge called out, holding a faded Velcro sneaker in one hand and a half-eaten granola bar in the other. "We're already late, and Daddy's boss is gonna have a heart attack if I mess up again." The 6-year-old came running from the tiny bedroom of their 2-room apartment over the laundromat, dragging his backpack behind him, superhero cape flapping behind him like it was the most important day of his life. To him, maybe it was. For Aaron, it was just another Tuesday, another shift at the Crestmont Grand Hotel, the ritziest spot in the city where he worked maintenance and occasionally filled in as bellhop when they were short. By the time Aaron maneuvered Wesley into the back seat and dropped him off at school, he was already 10 minutes late. His beat-up sedan coughed its way into the employee parking lot behind the gold-trimmed building, and he flew through the staff entrance, apron half-tied around his waist. "Room 1803, barked his supervisor, not even looking up from his clipboard. "VIP guest," the usual assistant called out. "You're helping her settle in." Aaron blinked. "Wait me." "You clean up well enough. Just smile, carry her bags, don't talk too much, and don't screw this up." He didn't have time to argue. Within 5 minutes, he was on the top floor, standing in front of a penthouse suite that probably cost more than his entire year's rent. He gave a knock. The door opened, and for a second, Aaron forgot how to breathe. She was standing there barefoot, her long dark hair still slightly damp from the rain, a crisp white blouse tucked into high-waisted pants that looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. Her eyes were sharp, curious, watchful. "Hi," she said, voice smooth but amused. "You're not who I was expecting." Aaron blinked back to life. "Sorry, ma'am, Aaron Aldridge. They asked me to assist you today." She tilted her head. "Aaron, like that." He nodded awkwardly, stepping inside and lifting her 2 bags, one of which nearly threw out his back. Staying long." "Just a few weeks," she said, watching him carefully. "Business and a little escape." From what, he didn't ask, she didn't offer. As he set her bags down in the master bedroom, she followed him in, leaning against the doorframe. "So, do you always get assigned to help guests in the penthouse?" He gave a sheepish smile. "Only when someone calls in sick or I make the mistake of being early." She laughed. "Lucky me." He didn't know what to say to that. She was clearly someone important. She carried herself like she owned the building. But she didn't act snobby. There was something easy in the way she spoke to him, like she actually saw him. Before he could excuse himself, she stopped him. "Wait, what floor has the coffee bar again?" "I can show you," he offered. "It's just downstairs." She grinned. "Lead the way, Aaron." They took the private elevator together. Her perfume was subtle floral, expensive, and he suddenly became aware of his wrinkled shirt and worn shoes. "So," she said, glancing at him, "do you always work in hotels?" He shrugged. "Before this, I did construction. Then my son was born and I needed something more stable. Hotels seemed less risky." "Son," she echoed, surprised. "Yeah, Wesley, he's 6, thinks he's a superhero." She smiled and something in her expression softened. "That's cute." They reached the cafe and she ordered a black coffee and a croissant. Aaron started to step away, but she gestured toward the small table in the corner. "Sit with me, if you're not in trouble yet." He hesitated. "You sure?" "Yeah, could use a little normal conversation." So he sat, and for 20 minutes they talked, about nothing, about everything. She asked questions with genuine interest about Wesley, his work, his past. He learned her name was Rowan Hartley. She was here for meetings, she said, but didn't go into details. "Rowan," he repeated, "pretty name." She smiled. "Thanks, I've always liked that it sounds strong." He nodded. "It fits." By the time he realized how long they'd been talking, his supervisor was calling him on the radio, demanding to know why he hadn't returned. Rowan placed her hand gently on his. Hey, thanks for the company. I'll request you again. He stood flustered. You don't have to. I want to. That night, back in their tiny apartment, Wesley was sitting on the couch eating cereal for dinner while Aaron reheated leftovers. But his mind was somewhere else. On Rowan, on her laugh, on how she looked at him like he wasn't just some guy in a hotel uniform. He didn't see her again for 3 days. Then she called the front desk asking for Aaron specifically. He went up nervous, expecting another bag run. But instead, she handed him a slim black envelope. I'm going to a dinner tonight, some fancy thing. You're off at 7, right? He blinked. Yeah, why? Her eyes sparkled. Come with me. Rowan. It's not a date, just a +1. Hate going to those things alone. He looked down at his work boots. I don't have anything to wear to something fancy. She grinned. That's already taken care of. The envelope had a suit voucher, tailored, name already on it. Aaron stared at it like it was made of gold. Why would you do this? She met his eyes. Because I like talking to you, and I think you deserve to be seen. He didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever said something like that to him before. As she turned to go, she called over her shoulder, pick me up at 8. And just like that, something in his world shifted. He didn't know who she really was. But whatever this was, it was only just getting started. The suit fit like it had been stitched for someone else's life. Aaron stood in front of the full-length mirror in the staff locker room, the charcoal jacket hugging his shoulders with quiet authority, the crisp white shirt a far cry from his usual frayed collars. He hadn't worn cufflinks since his cousin's wedding, and even then, they'd been borrowed. These were engraved with subtle initials he didn't recognize, part of the rental, but they gleamed like they belonged on someone who drank champagne before noon. He adjusted the tie again, nervous energy creeping into his chest. He'd arranged for his neighbor Mrs. Dugan, a retired nurse who adored Wesley, to stay with him for the night. He'd promised it was just a quick event, nothing to worry about, back before bedtime. But the moment he stepped into the main lobby and saw Rowan descending the grand staircase in a midnight blue gown, he knew nothing about tonight was going to be quick or forgettable. Her heels clicked softly against the marble, her hair swept into a low twist that made her look impossibly elegant. The room didn't dim, but it felt like it should have. She spotted him and smiled, not polite, not amused, but warm. Like he'd already passed a test he didn't know he was taking. I knew the suit would work, she murmured as she reached him. You clean up dangerously well, Aaron. He offered his arm, still half-stunned. You look. Don't say nice, she teased. He exhaled a quiet laugh. I was going to say intimidating, actually. She laughed, and then they were ushered into a sleek black town car waiting out front. The driver opened the door without a word, and Rowan slipped in with practiced ease. Aaron followed, unsure if he should be impressed or cautious. The ride was quiet for a moment, the city lights flickering past them. Then she turned to him. I didn't bring you tonight to impress anyone, she said softly. I just wanted someone real beside me. He looked over, unsure what to say to that. She didn't elaborate. They arrived at a private rooftop venue, towering above the skyline. The kind of place Aaron had only seen in magazines. Glass walls, a string quartet, servers carrying trays of tiny hors d'oeuvres he couldn't pronounce. Rowan moved through the crowd like she belonged there because she did, but she never let go of his arm. People glanced at him, curious, some confused. One man, older in a steel gray suit, gave Rowan a long look before approaching. You didn't mention bringing a guest, he said, voice dry. I didn't think I needed your permission, Malcolm, she replied, tone light but firm. Malcolm's eyes flicked to Aaron, assessing. And you are? Aaron, he said, extending a hand. I work maintenance at the Crestmont. Malcolm didn't return the handshake. "Charming," he said and walked away. Erin turned to her. "Should probably leave." "No," she said immediately. "He doesn't get to decide that." He hesitated. "You sure I'm not making things harder?" She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Harder for who? Them? Let them be confused. Like you here." They moved toward a quieter corner, near the edge of the terrace. The city buzzed below them, unaware of the storm of tension in the air. "So," he asked, trying to ground himself, "what do you actually do, Rowan?" She tilted her head. "I manage a few companies, investments mostly, some development. It started with tech, then moved to other things." He absorbed that, like startups. Startups, private equity, property. He nodded slowly. "So you're successful." She smiled faintly. "That's one word for it." He didn't ask how much money she had. He didn't want to know, not yet. Knowing would make it harder to pretend they were just two people at a party. A waiter passed with champagne. Rowan took one glass and handed him the other. "To breaking patterns," she said. He clinked his glass against hers. "To surviving 5 conversations without accidentally insulting anyone." She laughed again, and the sound made something shift in his chest. Later, as the night wore on and the crowd thinned, Rowan led him to a quieter hallway inside, away from the music and chatter. "I know this is probably the strangest night you've had in a while," she said. He leaned against the wall. "Strange isn't always bad." She stepped closer. "You haven't asked me why I brought you, why I picked you." "I figured, if you wanted to tell me, you would." Her eyes faltered for the first time. "Most people don't wait for that." He looked at her, really looked. "You're not most people." She exhaled just barely. "Back home, everyone I meet wants something. A deal, a connection, a favor. You just talk to me like I mattered, without asking for anything." He didn't know what to do with the weight of that, so he said nothing. "Besides," she added, voice lighter, "I needed someone to keep me from throwing a drink in Malcolm's face." "I'd have caught it for you," he said. She grinned. "That's exactly why I brought you." When the car dropped them back at the hotel, Rowan didn't get out right away. She turned to him, fingers tugging gently at the edge of his sleeve. "I'm leaving town in 2 weeks," she said quietly. "But until then, I'd like to see you again, if you want." He didn't hesitate. "I do." She smiled, softer this time. "Then let's not pretend this is nothing." He watched her walk back into the hotel, her silhouette framed in gold light. And for the first time in a long time, Erin felt like something impossible was just beginning to make sense. Erin had never been inside a gallery that didn't have a gift shop attached to it. But now, on a Thursday evening, he stood beneath a vaulted glass ceiling, surrounded by abstract sculptures, polished marble floors, and people whose shoes cost more than his entire wardrobe. He felt the weight of his presence not unwelcome, but glaringly out of place. Rowan stood beside him, her hand lightly resting in the crook of his elbow. She wore a tailored black jumpsuit with an open back, her hair swept to the side. The gallery's lighting caught the glint of a delicate gold chain at her neck. She looked like she belonged here. He still wasn't sure what he looked like. "I didn't realize this was more than an art show," he murmured, scanning the crowd. "It's a fundraiser," she replied, her tone casual but her gaze alert. "Silent auction, bidding wars, that sort of thing." "And you're just attending." "I'm underwriting the restoration of the northern wing," she said, lifting a glass of white wine from a passing tray. "So technically, I'm the reason there's a piano quartet playing in the atrium." He blinked. "You paid for that?" "Yes." He looked at the quartet, the sweeping arches, the floral arrangements spilling out of crystal vases. "You really don't do things halfway." "I tried halfway once," she said, sipping her wine. It wasn't worth it. They moved together through the gallery, stopping to admire a painting that looked like a storm trapped in oil. She glanced at him sideways. "You're quiet." He shifted his weight, just trying not to breathe too hard near anything expensive. She laughed. "You're allowed to exist here, Aaron." "I know, it's just this world." He gestured around them. "It feels like a place I visit, not one I stay in." She didn't argue. Instead, she set her wine down and guided him toward the terrace, away from the crowd. The air was cooler outside. The city stretched far below them in glittering layers. "I didn't bring you here to prove anything," she said. "I just wanted you near me tonight." He leaned on the railing. "You always this direct." "You don't like it." "I didn't say that." She studied him. "You're waiting for the other shoe to drop, aren't you?" "What makes you say that?" "Because I've been that person too. The one who thinks something this good must come with strings." He didn't respond right away. The wind caught his collar. He looked at her, really looked, and saw not just her beauty or the way she moved through the world like it bowed for her, but the flicker of uncertainty beneath her calm. "You ever been in something like this before?" he asked. "Not quite like this." "Me neither." There was a pause, then. "Do you want to be?" she asked. He turned to face her. "I don't know how this works." "Neither do I," she said, "but I'd rather figure it out with someone who isn't trying to impress me." They didn't kiss, not yet, but something in the air shifted between them, like the moment before a storm breaks, not dangerous, but vast. Later that night, back at the apartment, Wesley was asleep with a blanket half off his bed and a plastic sword tucked under one arm. Aaron stood in the doorway of his son's room for a long time, watching the rise and fall of his little chest. He thought about the gallery. The way Rowan had introduced him as her guest, not her date, not her assistant, just someone she wanted there. He thought about the way her hand had lingered at the small of his back when she'd steered him away from a man asking pointed questions about his job. She hadn't flinched. She hadn't apologized for him. He turned off the light and went to the kitchen, where Mrs. Dugan was finishing a crossword at the table. "He went down easy," she said, peering at him over her glasses. "You look like you walked through someone else's dream." He poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. "I think I did." She tilted her head. "This woman of yours, she trouble?" "Not yet," he said, "but she's not simple." "Nothing worth it ever is." He nodded, then reached for his phone. Rowan hadn't asked him to call, but he wanted to hear her voice. Before he could dial, the screen lit up with her name. She didn't say hello. "Come with me tomorrow," she said, "to New Canaan." "Why?" "There's a property I'm considering buying, but I don't want to go alone." "You don't need me to play tour guide for a mansion." "I don't need you for anything," she said. "I want you there, Aaron." He hesitated. "I've got Wes tomorrow." "I'll have a driver pick up both of you. There's a garden on the grounds. I saw it. He'll love it." "You planned all that already." "I did." He didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice was low. "Okay." The next morning, the driver arrived in a silver SUV that looked like it belonged in a movie. Wesley ran to the window with his superhero cape dragging behind him, shouting, "Is that a spaceship?" Aaron fastened his son's seatbelt and climbed in after him, trying not to think about how this was the first time in his life someone else had made arrangements for him. Not asked, not negotiated, just handled it, like he mattered. New Canaan was an hour north, and the air changed as they drove cleaner, quieter. The estate was built into a hill with ivy-covered walls, stone terraces, and a fountain in the shape of a lion. Wesley ran straight for the garden, trailing behind Rowan's assistant, who had arrived earlier to prep the visit. Aaron and Rowan wandered the grounds in silence for a moment, then she gestured toward the back of the house. I grew up in a place like this, until everything fell apart. What happened? He asked. My father lost everything, bad investments, worse choices. We went from this to nothing. I built it back on my own terms. He studied her face. You ever miss it, that version of life? No, I miss what it could have been if people had been honest. Aaron nodded. Then, quietly, I used to think rich people never had to fight for anything. We fight, she said. We just bleed in private. He reached for her hand without thinking. She let him. And standing there, amidst the columns and stone lions, she turned to him with a look that made his pulse thrum. I don't want to go back to New York tonight, she said. Then don't. She stepped closer. Stay here with me. He glanced toward the garden, where Wesley was now trying to climb a low tree under Mrs. Dugan's watchful eye. I can't stay the night, he said. I know. But I'll stay until sunset. She smiled. That's enough. And for now it was. Rowan stood at the edge of the ballroom's mezzanine, watching the auction below unfold in a blur of raised paddles and champagne flutes. The final gala of the Crestmont Restoration Fund was in full swing, men in tailored tuxedos, women in floor-length gowns, and the kind of quiet power that filled a room without needing to announce itself. But all she could focus on was the sound of footsteps approaching behind her. She didn't have to turn to know it was him. She felt it. You're late, she said without turning. I had to get Wesley settled, Aaron replied, coming to stand beside her. He insisted on building a pillow fort before I left. He said it was important. She smiled at that. He's not wrong. Aaron tugged at the cuff of his suit jacket new this time, not borrowed. A gift from Rowan, though he'd resisted it until she made him promise to wear something that made him feel like he belonged. You didn't tell me this thing was black tie, he said, surveying the scene below. I didn't think I had to, she said, glancing at him. You've been stepping into this world better than most people born into it. I'm still figuring out where I fit. You don't have to fit, she said. You just have to stand beside me. They moved down the staircase together. No flashbulbs, no announcements, just quiet acknowledgement from those who recognized her, and curious glances at the man who walked beside her without hesitation. Rowan led him past the auction tables to a quieter corner, where the sound of music and money softened. A sleek woman with a clipboard approached them. MS, Hartley, the press would like a quick word before the final item. Just 5 minutes. Rowan's jaw tensed. Later. The woman hesitated. They've been asking about him. Aaron stiffened. Rowan stepped forward. If they want a story, they can write about the 10 scholarships we just funded, not my personal life. As the woman disappeared into the crowd, Aaron looked at her. You don't have to protect me. I'm not protecting you, Rowan said. I'm protecting what we're building. He searched her face. Are we building something? She nodded once. Yes, unless you're backing away now. I'm not, he said, but I need to know how real this is, outside of driver pickups and rooftop galas. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded envelope. I was going to wait until after the final bid, but I think now's better. Aaron took it, brows furrowing as he opened it. Inside was a formal letter acceptance to a business development program. Tuition fully covered, his name already listed. The signature at the bottom was hers. His voice was low. You did this behind my back. No, she said. I did it beside you. You just didn't know I was already standing there. He looked up. Why? Because you've spent your whole life building everyone else's dreams. It's time someone helped build yours. He folded the letter, careful not to crease it. You think couldn't have done this without you. I think you would have tried, but I wanted to be part of it. For a long moment, they stood in silence. Then Rowan's name was called from the dais. She exhaled and stepped away, giving him one last look before ascending the stage. Aaron watched as she took the mic, her voice steady, her poise effortless. We've raised enough tonight to fully restore the north and west wings of the Crestmont, she said. More than that, we've proven that legacy isn't about inheritance. It's about what we choose to leave behind. Applause followed, but Aaron didn't move. When she stepped down, he met her halfway. You're terrifying, he said, voice low. She tilted her head. That's new. You walk into a room and change the temperature. You look at me like I'm not supposed to be grateful but equal, and it scares the hell out of me. And you're still here. He nodded. I'm still here. She reached for his hand, her grip firm. Then come with me. They slipped out through the service exit, down the back hallway that led to the quiet interior courtyard of the hotel. The fountain was still on, the water catching the overhead lights like scattered diamonds. I never used to come down here, she said, stepping onto the cobblestones. Too exposed, too quiet. So why now? Because I want this moment to be ours. Aaron pulled her gently toward him. You told me once you were leaving soon. I was, she said, but it changed my mind. Why? Because I finally found something I don't want to run from. He looked at her, really looked. No gowns, no glass towers, no curated smiles. Just her. I don't have a ring, he said. I don't have anything fancy to offer. Good, she said. Then I know it's real. I'm not perfect. I don't need perfect. I need you. And then finally he kissed her. Not cautious, not hesitant, but fully, like a man who had nothing left to fear and everything left to gain. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. So what now? He asked. We go home, she said. To your penthouse. No, she said, smiling, to wherever you and Wesley are. The next morning, Wesley woke to the sound of breakfast being made in a kitchen that smelled like fresh basil and sourdough toast. He wandered out in his pajamas to find Rowan standing at the stove, flipping pancakes with a precision that suggested this wasn't her first attempt at normal. Aaron leaned against the doorway, watching the two of them. Wesley eyed her cautiously. Are you staying for breakfast? Rowan looked over her shoulder. Only if that's okay with you. He shrugged. Do you make dinosaur pancakes? No, but I take detailed instructions. Wesley considered this. You can stay. Aaron chuckled. That's high praise. Rowan set a plate on the table and looked up at Aaron, her eyes warm. I'll take it. And for the first time in a very long time, Aaron realized he wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore. He was just home. The wind off the Hudson was crisp as the last of the leaves spun across the sidewalk. Aaron adjusted the collar of his jacket and glanced down at the small hand gripping his. Wesley was humming under his breath, dragging a red paper kite behind him with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could maintain through a chilly November afternoon. Rowan waited at the far end of the park path, standing beside a bench with a thermos tucked under her arm. Her coat was deep green wool, cinched at the waist, and her boots had a slight scuff at the toe that made Aaron smile. She was finally breaking them in, just like she was learning how to fit into the rhythm of their life slowly, but with certainty. I told you she'd bring the good hot chocolate, Wesley said, tugging him forward. She always does, Aaron replied, squeezing his son's hand. Rowan handed Wesley the thermos without a word and let him run off toward the open lawn with the kite flapping behind him. I got the call this morning, she said, turning toward Aaron. He raised a brow. From who? The board at Hartley and Caro. They've finalized the sale. His brows lifted. You actually did it. She nodded, sold my majority shares, walked away completely. He let that settle between them. You've been tied to that company since you were 20. I needed to know who I was without it, she said. Turns out, I still like who I am. Aaron reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the folded acceptance letter she'd given him weeks ago. I got my start date. She tilted her head. You're going. I am. Evening classes, 3 nights a week. I want to do this right. She stepped closer. You will. They watched Wesley trip over his own feet and pop back up. Laughing, the kite tangled around his leg like it was part of the plan. I've been thinking, Rowan said, voice lower now, about what matters. And it's not the skyline or the boardrooms. It's Sunday mornings, grocery lists, watching someone's eyes when they talk about their kid. You want that. I already have that, she said simply. Aaron's mouth curved slowly. You're sure? I bought a place, she added. Small, brick townhouse, 2 bedrooms and a tiny backyard. His eyes lit with quiet surprise. You did. For us, if you want it. He looked out at Wesley, who was now attempting to launch the kite backwards. We'd need to repaint the 2nd bedroom. I figured. And maybe build a treehouse. Rowan arched a brow. In a backyard the size of a closet. We'll figure it out. She reached for his hand, twining their fingers together. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. The next few weeks passed in a blur of boxes, paint samples, and late nights spent assembling furniture with instructions that made no sense. Rowan learned to cook a passable pasta, though Aaron still handled anything that required more than 2 steps. Wesley claimed his new room with the confidence of a king claiming his castle, taping superhero posters to the walls before the paint had even dried. One evening, while Aaron was reviewing class notes at the kitchen table, Rowan leaned against the doorway, holding a thin velvet box in her hand. I thought we said no surprises this month, he teased. It's not that kind of surprise, she said, stepping closer. Inside was a silver key on a chain. Engraved in tiny script were 3 initials, R, A, and W. Too soon, she asked lightly. He stood and wrapped his arms around her waist. No such thing. They didn't need a ceremony. They didn't need matching rings or a band playing in a garden. They had a kitchen that smelled like garlic, a couch that was too small for 3 people, but perfect for 2 adults and a giggling child, and a life that felt exactly like the one they were meant to have. On the first warm day of spring, they took a trip upstate. Nothing fancy, just a rental cabin, a grill, and marshmallows. Wesley spent the weekend catching frogs and insisting he'd become a nature explorer. Rowan read books on the porch, humming under her breath, while Aaron built a fire that took longer than he would ever admit. That night, as stars dusted the sky, and Wesley snored softly in the loft above, Rowan curled against Aaron on the porch swing. You ever think you'd end up here? She asked. He shook his head. Not once. But you're happy. He pressed a kiss to her temple. I didn't know what happy really meant until you. She leaned into him, her voice a whisper. Then let's keep choosing this. Every day, he said, without question. The swing creaked beneath them, the night air cool between their fingers. And for the first time in either of their lives, there was no more waiting, no more running, and no more wondering what came next. They had arrived, together,